The Michael Jackson movie was supposed to be one of the biggest music biopics ever made. It wasn't just another film about a famous singer. It was a chance to bring to the big screen the life of a man who was a child prodigy, a global phenomenon, the symbol of pop music, a dance icon, a target of the press, accused, acquitted, worshipped, and hated with almost the same intensity. But then one question started circulating behind the scenes in Hollywood. Why was the movie cut? And we're not talking about one small scene, some minor detail, or a normal editing adjustment. We're talking about an entire section of the story that, according to reports, had to be removed, rewritten, and reshot. The kind of cut that doesn't happen because a director simply changed their mind. It happens because something much bigger got in the way. And maybe that's the strangest part of all. The Michael Jackson movie wasn't cut just because of an artistic decision. It was cut because Michael Jackson's life is still a battleground, a battle between memory and accusation, between fans and critics, between legacy and scandal, between what Hollywood wants to show and what old legal agreements may not allow it to show. To understand this, we have to go back to a time when Michael Jackson still seemed untouchable. In the 1980s, Michael was practically a force of nature. He wasn't just famous. He was a global event. When he released an album, the world stopped. When he danced, it looked like the rules of the human body had been rewritten. When he appeared on television, millions watched as if they were witnessing something impossible. But behind the shine, there was a much darker story. A childhood shaped by pressure, control, fear, and expectations that were almost inhuman. Michael didn't grow up like an ordinary child. He grew up as a product, as an artist, as a performance machine. While other kids played, he rehearsed. While other kids made mistakes in private, he made mistakes in front of demanding adults, record executives, and audiences. And that is essential to any movie about him. Michael Jackson was always two things at once, an absolute genius and a deeply wounded person. So when Hollywood decided to make a biopic called Michael, the promise seemed obvious. Tell everything. The difficult childhood, the success with the Jackson 5, the solo explosion, Thriller, Bad, the physical changes, the loneliness, the relationship with fame, the tabloid obsession, and, inevitably, the allegations that marked the later part of his life. But that is exactly where the problem began. According to reports published before and after the movie's release, the original version included a major section involving the 1993 allegations when Jordan Chandler, then 13 years old, accused Michael Jackson of sexual abuse. Michael denied the allegations, reached a civil settlement in 1994 without admitting wrongdoing, and was not criminally charged in that case. Years later, in 2005, he stood trial in a separate case involving another allegation and was acquitted. But here is the detail that sounds like something out of a legal thriller. According to those reports, there was allegedly a clause connected to the settlement with the Chandler family that prevented them from being dramatized or portrayed in a movie. And when that clause was reportedly rediscovered, production had already gone too far. The result? The original third act became a legal problem. Think about how massive that is. A biopic is usually built like a climb. The first act shows the origin, the second shows the rise, the third shows the central conflict, the fall, the consequences, the legacy. If the original version of Michael really was heading toward the 1993 allegations, then this wasn't just another section. It was the most delicate point in the entire story. Cutting it means changing the heart of the movie. It's like making a movie about an empire and removing the war that almost destroyed it. It's like telling the story of a king and stopping before the trial. The movie stops being a complete biography and becomes something else. A selected version, an edited version, maybe safer, maybe more marketable, maybe more comfortable. And that is where the word forbidden starts to make sense. Not necessarily because someone hid one absolute truth, but because certain parts of Michael Jackson's life became so explosive that any attempt to portray them can trigger lawsuits, backlash, boycotts, fan attacks, media criticism, and battles between families, studios, and the estate. According to People and Entertainment Weekly, the movie released in 2026 ended up focusing mainly on Michael's early career and closing its story in 1988, before the public allegations of 1993. That decision completely changed how audiences saw the film. For some, it was a way to celebrate the artist. For others, it was a way to avoid the most controversial part of the story. And there is a very simple reason this is so controversial. Michael Jackson is not just a dead celebrity. He is a living industry. Even after his death, Michael continues to generate money. Music, documentaries, stage musicals, merchandise, publishing rights, streaming, biographies, archives, images. The name Michael Jackson still moves millions. So any official movie about him is not just art. It is also an asset. It is a brand. It is reputation. It is business. And when a movie is produced with the involvement or approval of an artist's estate, the question always comes up, how honest will it be? How far will it go into the uncomfortable parts? How much will it preserve the myth? Because there is a huge difference between telling the story of a person and protecting the image of a brand. In Michael's case, that line is almost impossible to separate. To his fans, he was a victim of extortion, racism, media manipulation, and persecution. To his accusers and critics, he was protected by fame, money, and power. To many viewers, maybe he is simply a figure impossible to reduce to one single answer. And maybe that is why the movie was cut. Because any complete version of Michael Jackson would upset someone. If the movie had strongly focused on the allegations, fans would say Hollywood was attacking a man who can no longer defend himself. If the movie ignored the allegations, critics would say Hollywood was whitewashing history. If the movie tried to land somewhere in the middle, it would probably be attacked by both sides. So the production chose a path. Step back in time. Ending before 1993 does not erase the controversy. It simply leaves it outside the door. But the problem is that the audience knows it is there. Everyone knows. And when a movie about Michael Jackson ends before the most turbulent chapter, the silence becomes part of the story. Sometimes what a movie doesn't show speaks louder than what it does. And in this case, the cut became the curiosity. The reshoots also drew attention because of their cost. Reports said the reworked third act added around $10 million to $15 million to the budget, with additional weeks of filming in 2025. Variety was cited by outlets following the situation, and People also reported that the estate had covered additional costs tied to the changes. That raises an even bigger question. If this was just a creative decision, why did it cost so much? Because changing the ending of a movie is not just cutting a few lines. It means altering structure, pacing, motivation, character development, and emotional payoff. A movie is like a row of dominoes. When you remove a major piece near the end, several earlier pieces stop making sense. So you have to rewrite, reshoot, reorganize, and try to make it look like that was always the plan. But audiences can tell. And critics noticed too. Dan Reed, the director of Leaving Neverland, the 2019 documentary that featured allegations from Wade Robson and James Safechuck against Michael Jackson, strongly criticized the biopic, arguing that it softens or avoids central parts of the singer's life. To Reed, a film that ignores those allegations cannot be considered a complete portrait of Michael Jackson. On the other side, Michael's defenders argue that the movie should not turn allegations into a conviction, especially because Michael was acquitted in the 2005 criminal trial and always denied the accusations. To them, Michael's story should be remembered for his artistic impact, his music, his dancing, and the way he broke racial and cultural barriers in entertainment. And that is where everything gets complicated. Michael Jackson was one of the greatest entertainers of all time. That is almost impossible to dispute. But the scale of his talent does not automatically erase the difficult questions. At the same time, allegations, no matter how serious, must be handled with responsibility, context, and precision. Maybe the greatest challenge of making a movie about Michael Jackson is this. It requires the courage to show the light and the courage to face the shadow. But Hollywood often prefers the light. The light sells tickets. The light moves people. The light makes the audience sing along. The shadow divides, unsettles, and threatens profit. And in the case of Michael, the shadow wasn't just difficult. It was legally dangerous. So when someone asks, why was the Michael Jackson movie cut? The simplest answer is this. Because of legal issues involving the portrayal of the 1993 allegations and the need to rebuild the third act. But the deeper answer is something else. The movie was cut because Michael Jackson remains an open wound in pop culture. He died, but the debate did not. The music keeps playing, but the questions keep coming. The fans keep defending him, the critics keep accusing, the documentaries keep investigating, the estate keeps protecting, and Hollywood keeps trying to turn an impossible life into a 2-hour narrative. But some lives do not fit into 2 hours. And maybe Michael Jackson is the greatest example of that. Because if you show only the talented boy, you lose the controversial man. If you show only the controversial man, you lose the revolutionary artist. If you show only the victim of fame, you ignore the people who say they were his victims. If you show only the allegations, you ignore decades of cultural impact that changed music forever. So the movie's cut is not just about a clause, a contract, or a multi-million-dollar reshoot. It is about who controls the memory of an icon. It is about how far the industry is willing to go to protect a legend. It is about the fear of telling a whole story when that story could destroy the image that millions of people still want to preserve. In the end, the Michael Jackson movie was cut because the truth in this case is not simple. It is contested, it is expensive, it is dangerous. And depending on who tells it, it changes completely. And maybe that is the most chilling mystery of all. Sometimes, the biggest secret in a biopic is not what was filmed. It is what someone decided you were not supposed to see. So comment below. Do you think the movie should have shown everything, even the controversies, or was it fair to focus only on Michael Jackson's musical legacy? And if you enjoy mysterious stories behind movies, artists, and celebrities, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because some truths only appear when we look at what was cut.